Broadcasting live from the Business Radio X studios in Phoenix, Arizona, it's time for Phoenix Business Radio, spotlighting the city's best businesses and the people who lead them.
Welcome to The Naked Truth, hosted by me, Lori Corrigan, and sponsored by Snake Charmer Men's Body Waxing. Ooh, you still with me? As you know, this show is all about nakedness, spiritual, emotional, mental, and even physical, because you can't say for sure I'm not sitting here in my birthday suit. And maybe not Angela as well. Karen, I don't think so. Here we pay tribute to the valuable contributions you gentlemen make, both personally and professionally, by providing a safe zone for you guys to speak your minds amidst this current social climate where you struggle to be heard. Today, oh man, what a show. You guys need to put on your wizard hats for this because it's going to get wild. When someone's involved with military, mechanics, and technology, you figure that person is a guy. And for this show in particular, you expect it to be. But that is the first of many logical assumptions today's guest will have you reconsidering about our stringent social norms. IT analyst and social media heavyweight Angela Felix shines positive light on a lifetime of going toe-to-toe with her masculine counterparts in these male-dominated fields. Welcome.
Thank you, Lori.
I'm
welcome. Excited to be here.
Oh, geez, this studio is so wild with energy from three gritty, vibrant, and nurturing women who've come together today to advocate for our male counterparts. Our third is Karen Nowicki, fearless owner of Phoenix Business Radio X, where we broadcast The Naked Truth, who's sitting next to me producing the show. Angela, where do we start?
I don't know, Lori. I don't know how far back you want to go.
Well, okay, so this is definitely a four guys show with guys.
Yep.
You're the first lady, woman, female, chick, gal. Redneck? Okay, I didn't go there.
I'm just
You're
kidding.
so much more. That's way down the list.
That's true.
You're here because of recent things that have happened in your life and things that started way back when you were a kid. And all of them are associated with men. Your involvement with, your respect for, your struggle with men. And that's why you are perfect for this show, because there's no getting away from gender.
Nope.
Women and men are somehow paired together, which doesn't always work, but in many different ways, not just romantically.
Sure.
But when it works, which is a lot of times, and it does have to do with how people view gender and restrictions and opportunities, that those relationships can work better sometimes than others. I know with me, I have a firm belief that to raise the bar and really make that relationship synchronized is when people possess an equal amount of masculine and feminine energy. That just seems to bring it into the center, understanding better the person you're trying to connect with, whether it's romance or business or just on a casual basis.
Sure.
If we're too of anything, too feminine, too masculine, those would be repelling. So what I'm thinking, all my life too, I've been perceived as a man in feminine woman's flesh because my perspectives, values, and actions are so well aligned with male energy to the point where I have many more male friends than female. And I think you can say the same.
I would definitely say the same. I do have a lot of female connections, but they're not the folks that when I'm, like, for instance, you talk about what I'm going through, they're not the first ones I reach out to. And it's not for any reason other than I just feel a more deep, meaningful connection with a lot of my guy friends. I know that they're not going to judge me. I know that I'm going to be able to say what I need to say, and I won't have to tiptoe around on my words. I won't have to dance around anyone's feelings. I'll be able to be direct. They'll take what they need from that conversation and then, go with it. So it's a different type of friendship when you're friends, I think, with men than you are with women.
And that's a really great point, because we are not here to bash anyone,
right?
Men or women. It is just a different relationship. That's because we are completely different creatures.
Yep.
And that's also why we struggle to align together.
Yeah.
So with your account of how things have gone in your life, this is not a men versus women. It's a men with women.
Right.
And you're going to highlight the learning experiences as well as the good experiences. Sometimes the outcomes didn't play the way you thought, but you learned from it. And this is in support of men. The whole show is, and it's not always just, flowers and
Rainbows,
unicorn
and
farts and
Well, I mean, I do, rainbow farts is something I pride myself
But do they
on.
have
No,
glitter?
I'm just kidding.
Do they have glitter on it?
I mean, I can toss
Raise
some
the bar.
glitter.
Well, let's start with, so early on, you in the military. Now, many people know that about you, but I recently saw some photographs.
Yes.
Holy cow. I think you will do yourself and your followers, because you have a huge social media following. Have you put those on to show people really what you did in that capacity?
I haven't. I have on Instagram and on Facebook. I've shared those photos. I haven't shared them as much on LinkedIn. I think primarily just because a lot of people don't like seeing people's selfies and people's pictures, and there's a lot of talk about it. But at the same time, there's a lot of questions that will come with that. And that takes me back down a dark road. And it was a whole career path, right? It was the military. I was going to retire. I was going to do all these things. And now here I am in IT and doing different things. So it's one of those things where I don't necessarily see it as anything heroic. I don't see it as anything. I think sometimes I don't really cast the right light on my military background. I think I've shared with you, Lori, I didn't have a good environment at home. I wanted to get away from that, and the military was my fastest first ticket out. And I did that. And it's funny because you would think joining the military, why, if you're trying to get out of your, home, is like, why would you join the military where you have someone constantly screaming? That was a cakewalk. I was giggling at the drill sergeants that were yelling at me. And it's like, this is going to be a rough 9 weeks for you if you don't like the way I'm doing a push-up right now. Because that's not all I do wrong. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things where I like sharing it, but I don't try to glorify it. It is what it was. I joined for college. I joined to get out of the house. I didn't join for a lot of the heroic reasons that some of our men join for, and a lot of women will join for, to go save the world. And I wish that I had. Maybe I would have stayed in longer.
You didn't know what you wanted from it. You just knew you needed to go somewhere other than where you were, because that was going to be detrimental if you didn't. So what did you bring when you went in there? At the point you started, it was probably extremely confusing and very frustrating and a bit scary. When you got through it, what did you leave behind that they were going to say, wow, she was a pretty awesome person?
I think I would, nobody's asked me that before. What did I leave behind? I think an appreciation for the small things. I was very combative with the drill sergeants in the beginning, thinking, I'm off on my own now. I can say what I want. You can't hit me. You can't slap me. You can't stop me. I'm going to run this mouth just like I do on LinkedIn, right? I did that to the drill sergeants. It doesn't go over well. They still can. They can't hit you, but they still make your life hell. And so it was one of those things where I think understanding, I had a drill sergeant that pulled me aside and was like, what's going on? Why? What are you doing? This isn't a joke. We're out here. If you're out in the battlefield, is that what you're going to be doing, soldier? Is that how you're going to be behaving? And, he asked me about my background. And I said, I don't know. I don't know what to do with myself. I'm just here. Wherever you tell me to go, wherever you tell me to do, winch chow, whatever, I'm just here. I'm along for the ride. And he kind of sat with me, and it was Drill Sergeant Webster. I'll never forget him. I have a picture if folks want to go see it out on Facebook and Instagram. But I'll never forget. And he said, you know what, soldier? People can only hold you back as much as you let them, and you are holding yourself back. So it was one of those things where I kind of embraced that. And then I sat with him and I said, but why are you always putting me on detail? And he said, because that's the only way you're going to learn. And I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, when I tell you to go move those rocks from one place to another, I don't give 2 cents about those rocks. It's not about those rocks getting moved. That's that time for you to reflect on the action that you did and put some thought into it while you're doing a tedious task, something as such as moving rocks. So, and it's funny because now that I'm older, right, I find myself doing yard work when I want to think about things, because like when I need to sit and I need to reflect on what's going wrong in my life, I'll go out there, I'll put some headphones on, and I'll get at the yard work. I enjoy it. And I reflect on things, and I try to figure out where things went wrong, where I can get things back on track. And so I learned the attention to detail. And I think what I left behind for the military was just a deeper understanding of why we do things the way that we do in the military. And it's not always just to F with people. It's not just to have you running around doing KP or moving rocks from one spot to another. There is a method to that madness, and there is a reasoning behind it.
So now picking weeds is your zen?
Funny enough, I don't necessarily like pulling the weeds, but I did figure out, like, if you stick a fork in the ground, then you twist it, it like grabs a hold of the roots, and you can just yank it right out. It's the greatest thing on earth. But I mean, it's such I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, where there's not a lot of thought involved into pulling weeds, right? Mm-hmm. But you still are doing it, and it's keeping you busy, but you're able to kind of, it's therapeutic.
Like he said, it's busy work.
There you go.
Your brain is disengaged, your body is doing whatever needs to be done, and you're free to just process.
Yep, exactly. So yeah, so now I enjoy. and I have a dishwasher, but I teach my kids to wash dishes by hand, because we don't need to rely on things or use energy where we don't need to. We have energy of our own we can put forth and put effort into, and sometimes do an even better job than like the dishwasher. So.
Oh yeah, things have been invented to replace things that weren't broken.
Yep,
And
those are the things that I learned in the military. You know what I mean? I can wax the shit out of a floor now. Let me tell you, I learned that too. And I mean, spit shining boots. I mean, these are all little tiny things that you learn in the military and you don't think about. But if I'm headed to a meeting, I got something on my shoe, I know what to do.
Are you familiar with the book by the Navy SEAL?
Which one?
Make Your Bed.
I'm not.
Oh, it's great. It's the same principle where you do a seemingly insignificant thing very first thing in the morning, which many people don't make their beds. And it sort of lets disarray trail through your day. And this is the thing. Spit shining shoes. Why? You're just going to get them all mussed up when you walk in them. Why make the bed? We're just coming back tonight to sleep in it. Well, then transfer that to why eat? I'm just going to be hungry again. That doesn't make sense.
Right,
you have to do that or else you're not going to be around. Right. So it has that correlation. Yep. How long were you in the military?
4 years.
Oh, okay. So you got through basic.
Yep. Oh, basic was the best part. Basic was the easy. That was the cakewalk. I was a tomboy growing up. My dad took me out to the lake. We went hunting. We went fishing. I mean, basic training was camp. They called it Camp Jackson. It was cake. AIT was a little harder. I missed my family a lot. I missed my baby sisters. I think I shared with you. I felt like I left them behind. And so that was hard for me. Those letters that they were writing were really hard to read sometimes. So,
and being in that environment where you were reading them helped strengthen you.
It did. You look around and everybody's missing their family. It's not just you. There's people that were missing their kids, that were right alongside me. And it is what it is. And you got a job to get done. You take the orders and you execute them.
And the camaraderie is built immediately because you are all in that same space.
It's funny you bring up the camaraderie, and I don't want to dive too deep on like racial tensions and things, but it's at a height right now, I think, because of everything going on politically. And I can tell you, when I was in the military, the only color we saw was camo. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, I had all these black friends or I had all these white friends or Asian. I didn't. I had a lot of military friends that would have died for me, and I the same for them.
And was there any guy in there who just wasn't on board with you or any other woman being there, and how did you bring him over?
Well, I would say that's not necessarily that they wouldn't be on board. There was a lot of men that were very much on board with women being in the military. It made things a little bit easier for them. There's people that like to harass people. I had a drill sergeant that was he was in a different barracks. It was constantly. And if it wasn't me, it was a different gal. And it was one of those things where I didn't have my voice at 18 years old. I just kind of laughed it off, go with the flow or whatever. But I think once I left basic training, I did write a letter to him, and I let him know everything that he had put me through. And unfortunately, that was intercepted by a first sergeant. So he called me personally and asked about the situation and let me know, well, there's other soldiers that had made complaints, and why didn't you make a complaint? And I said, I didn't realize I should do that. I didn't even know. And I don't know what happened with that gentleman's military career. I didn't follow up or anything. I just wanted him to know everything that he did that I didn't appreciate. And it is what it is. But, you do dirt, you get caught, it catches up with you.
And you learn to identify, and then you learn to protect yourself against
Well, what I learned is to speak up, because if you don't, I move on, he does it to the next one, right? So I've learned now, I I'm a no bullshit kind of gal. Like if I see you doing something even in the workplace that I don't think you should be doing, and I'm reeling that in, by the way, for anyone who might be listening, I'm trying to reel that in. But, I will be the first to say, hey, don't do that. That's not right. You can't do that. Because I think it takes sometimes someone drawing something to our attention before we even realize that we're doing it. You know what I mean? So this man had gotten away with the things he said because nobody ever stopped him. I didn't stop him until after the fact. You know what I mean? So then when you find out, well, there's a lot of soldiers involved, then you start to feel a little bit of guilt and a little bit of responsibility to take action on that.
Okay. And so he was one out of how many? And that's the whole thing. Just real quick connection to the Me Too movement, which is why the Naked Truth really did hit radio waves, is because all guys are paying the price for what
they are.
A relative handful are doing. And that is not what goes on in the military or your experience with it, correct?
Right. No, it's not. It's not what goes on. And a lot of people seem to think, oh, you're going to get harassed. People ask me, would you let your daughter join the military? And I'm like, I would, not because of what's going to go on with our country and her in that role in the United States of America. I worry about more long-term warfare and the way she'll mentally handle being away from her mom and stuff like that. Those are the things I worry about when I think about it. Am I worried about men? No, she'll be protected. There's no doubt in my mind she would be 100% protected in our United States military.
Mm-hmm. And she would start with herself. She would be the one to first ward off, don't even go there, don't even smell like you're going to go there.
When we had to do something as simple as PT, right? We had to get up every morning. We had to do PT. And
PT, for those who aren't sure?
Physical training. I'm sorry about that.
Okay.
So we get up, we go either run 2 miles or you do sit-ups, push-ups, all that fun stuff. The you'll kick if you get in trouble. That's always a fun one. But I remember in the PT test, I was kind of like I told you, I was a jerk. And I would max out my push-ups and I would max out my sit-ups and then I would wait and I would max out all the 2 mile run until the last couple of laps. And then I would walk it. I would purposely walk it to show them, oh, I can do this. I don't want to. I'm going to walk it. And it wasn't until male counterparts, they come running up beside you and they're like, don't do this to yourself, soldier. Don't do this. You're going to hurt the whole team. We're all going to get dropped. You can't do this. This isn't just about you. Stop making it just about you. And they would try to pull me alongside them, chanting, and they get you into the flow. It feels good. Hell, you know what I mean? Like you're going through it. And you feel like they're pulling you along. So I never saw what a lot of people like to say. I shouldn't say I never saw it. I saw the harassment side from the sergeant, but I didn't see the women being treated not as an equal ever. Mm-hmm. In fact, it was probably quite the opposite. There was expectations that I could do what I was hired to do for the military.
Mm-hmm. And surprising some, but an expectation that others had already of you.
Yeah.
Now, what about working with your dad at his shop with all male mechanics and staff? So here's military. Here's you as a mechanic.
Well, I ran the office. He was a mechanic. He knew how to fix cars, and he kind of owned the business or whatever. But I would run the office for him and check up on his employees and run errands and tasks for him.
But you can work on your own vehicle.
Well, I watched him,
yeah.
And he told me, give me a 1/2-inch socket or give me this or that. And I learned the hard way real quick what wasn't a wrench and what was, But I mean, now if something goes wrong, something minor, if I need to do something, I'm not concerned about that. Could my mom have taught me those things? No, she couldn't have. She wouldn't know the first thing about changing her oil. She was a stay-at-home mom. That's the role she wanted to play, and that's okay. But it took that masculine side of my dad to teach me how to kind of take care of myself. And not just in the vehicle. I mean, he taught there's little things to look for in your vehicle. Don't run your car out of gas, because if you keep doing that, you'll burn your fuel pump up. Now, we don't have those kind of fuel pumps in today's cars.
Right.
But back then, that was a real thing. You would burn your fuel pump up if you kept going on fumes. Those are things that, I learned along the way at working for him. The downside of it is he always felt like he needed to pick who I was going to date. So as I started to date and became a teenager, he would pick out his friends or his employees, and that's who I would be going on. And he wouldn't even ask me. I would get like a message from my mom or someone to be like, oh, so-and-so is going to pick you up and take you out tonight. And I'm like, you're looking at me like this is supposed to be a good thing. Like, I don't want nothing to do with that individual, but so be it. I went out with a tree trimmer. I went out with some guy that worked for him. I went out with a limo driver once because that's who my dad liked. It's like,
he was protecting you in a very unique way.
He knew some of the stereotypes that are out there about men, but he knew the men that worked for him really well. And he knew the men that were in his life really well. And he knew what he wanted for me. And so therefore he would try to push me in that direction, probably too much, but he did push me in that direction.
And you did not have an opportunity to choose who you wanted to go out with?
Oh,
ever?
No. I mean, later in life I did. After I left to go to the military, and I came back, I had my first real boyfriend at like 19 years old. So
you navigated that well? Or take us back to
I was
how
a train wreck. Are you kidding me? I called him like 10 times a day, and like it was not a good. No, I didn't know what I was doing because I didn't get out and do the dating world, and he protected me. And I didn't like any of the guys he made me go out with, and so that would always be awkward because then he would see him. I remember the tree trimmer guy. I hate calling him the tree trimmer guy. I should call him Chris, but he trimmed palm trees for us in our house, and he was sweet on me. And my dad made me go out with him, and he told the gentleman, he said, "You can't take my daughter out until you finish my bathroom." So he made him go in there and like help him finish retiling the bathroom.
Oh my gosh.
And so the guy took me out, and I was rude. You know what I did? I called up my little friend Christine, and I said, "Hey, I'm going to the movies. Do you want to go?" And like took my friend, had the guy sit up front with like my little sisters, and I sat in the back with my friend.
That was a survival move.
Maybe.
You felt very, very, what's the word?
Uncomfortable at a minimum.
Yes, and put on the spot.
Yeah.
But you are now, were you able to carry on a conversation like you do now with men, whether that be boys, young guys, or true men? How did it help working with your dad in that environment to gain more of masculine energy in a good way?
I think in a good way it did. It showed me that men like directness. They're not malicious with their words. I know us ladies like to think, you know what you said. No, they don't. They do not know. They do not realize it. And sometimes I think that they immediately realize by the look on our face that they shouldn't have said it, and they try to backpedal. But, you know, we put a lot of weight into our feelings and thinking that theirs are going to be similar and that they just know what they're doing is wrong, or they know what they're saying is wrong. And that's not the case. And I think I shared with you at our lunch or at our breakfast the practical jokes that they like to play. So, you know, I was running some errands for my dad, and I had a little 1986 Nissan Datsun at that time. It was, my friends called it a doorstop. It was gold color. Literally looked like it fit under a little triangle that went under a door. But I was driving down the road, and there's a gay porno magazine in the floorboard. Now, I didn't notice it right away because I'm, you know, young, teenager. My car was a train wreck, so I didn't see it. Would have never known had they not. When I got back a couple hours later, they're like giggling, and my dad's giggling and asking if there's anything odd or anything. And I'm like, what is going on? And they finally, they go out there and they show me this gay porn magazine that they've put in my floorboard, in my front driver's floorboard. And I looked at them and I was like, what if it had gotten under the brake and I got into a wreck? Like, could you imagine, like, what if the police found that? And he's like, that would be effing hilarious. And it's like, they don't get it.
They're simple. And they are self-identified as simple. They appreciate not being complicated. I think complicated is entirely different than complex. And we ladies can certainly be complicated, which I believe is where having more enlightenment with masculine energy tempers that emotional type of where you live. It's not a place where I live for sure. You have a handle on your life in a way that you're strong, but you're also sensitive. But there is a place for all of that to live together. And so that brings me to your experience, law enforcement officer, fire, EMS. I'm going to let you take this where you want to because there's so much on it you can draw from, especially most recent events.
Yeah, so recently, I found a new appreciation and I shouldn't say a new appreciation. I'll tell a funny little story because I had a girl reach out to me and call me a badge bunny, and I didn't even know what that was. So I looked it up, and I was fuming mad. But you know why I was fuming mad? Not because she called me a badge bunny, but because there was a coin termed for what I am this whole time, and I didn't know.
In a bad way. That's derogatory.
It was. And it's funny because I came back at her and I said, so now that I've Googled what a badge bunny is, help me understand why that's a bad thing. Because what you're saying to me is, I like a man that can put on a uniform every day and go into the most volatile situations and still come out of it with his head held high, doing what he needs to do, moving on to the next situation. You're telling me he can pass a background check because he had to get that job, probably has decent credit. Psychological, I know he's been through probably a polygraph. So, you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot involved in that process. So you're not hurting my feelings by calling me a badge bunny. I'm going to ask you, why don't you like those kind of men?
Oh, crickets. See, this is what I love so much about you. But what I love about you is you are so able to put people in their places when they're acting out, kind of like kids, and stop the conversation, but not in a way they're going to walk away saying, God, what a bitch, which might happen sometimes, but you oftentimes get them stumped and go, oh, okay, wow, she might have something there. Maybe not right at that moment. They're going to walk away fuming. But if someone doesn't have a response to something that's said to them that hits them to the core and stops them fast, that's a learning experience.
Yeah, you're not going to, it's not an insult to say that I like a very well-rounded, well-mannered, respectful man. You're not going to insult me with that. I'm going to laugh at you and be like, how's that fourth baby daddy working out? Just saying.
You stunned me. So you want to segue to your most recent?
So for this will be difficult, but I think I can keep it together. So I recently had a very big tragedy. My Jeep that I absolutely adore and love and took out every weekend. The engine caught fire and burned my home down, along with the vehicle next to it. So I've lost just about everything I own. Of course, I was able to get the kids out. I went back in after my fur babies. The 911 operator kept trying to tell me to get out of the house, but, you know, I had rabbits, so I had to go in. I had to go out. My dog took off running when I opened one of the bedroom doors that she was in. It scared her. Both of them, they took off running. And there's nothing I could do about it because at that point I was starting to choke on the smoke myself. So I had to leave the home and I had to leave our fur babies, some of our fur babies in that house. And it felt like forever for the fire department to get there. But I think the reality is it was probably less than 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. And they came over, they called the crisis response team out. So, you know, they're helping kind of talk to the kids and talking us through as I'm watching my home burn, right? And thinking, my daughter's freaking out. She's like, my guinea pig is in there. And I'm like, he's going to be fine. Stitch will be fine. And she's like, you don't know that. And there's a firefighter that's geared up. And I wouldn't have done it. I walked out of that home burning. And I know that, you know, we talked about this and he had gear on to help him protect. But that doesn't stop that roof from caving in and trapping that man. That doesn't stop him from maybe tripping and falling over one of the million hazards I had in the home because there's 3 children, animals, and, you know, and it's a 4th of July weekend. So there's dishes, you know what I mean? Like, it didn't stop him. He saw my daughter freaking out over the guinea pig. And he went in that home and he came running out with that guinea pig. And then, of course, after they have to spray down and kind of decontaminate themselves. And his heart was so big that he actually came over and he asked if he could hold the guinea pig. And I was like, please do. And one of his counterparts thought it was the cutest thing. Another male firefighter thought it was the cutest thing on earth and was taking pictures. So I was like, oh, well, if we're taking pictures, I want a picture of this man who just ran in to a burning home to save a guinea pig. You got to have a heart for that. So you're not going to tell me that that's a bad man. He might make some bad decisions or do things a little weird. And we can wrap back around to police, right? Mm-hmm. How can you not have a little bit of something going on upstairs or, you know, some kind of situation that maybe makes you a little bit more numb or a little bit more emotionally detached? You know, I know I dated a cop, right? They have an addiction to women. And I think that happens sometimes, not all of them, but a lot of them do. And I think that happens because you get so used to having to numb yourself from all the crazy that they're seeing every day. You know, they're going in and they're rescuing babies that have been beaten by their own parents, you know. How can that not mess you up internally? And they still every day get up and go do it, knowing they're going to walk into those situations. So I cut some slack to those folks because I've just had a few little bad things happen to me, right? They see bad day in and day out, and they still put their life on the line for you, for me, for anyone that calls them. And that, to me, that's not a bad person. That is an amazing person. They just maybe have some bad habits.
And you said you dated a cop and you learned this. You were able to have the conversation with him about what can be termed as stereotypes to some degree, because all cops aren't anything.
Right. No. Well, I mean, yeah, I kind of learned, you know, we say, you know, the women like a man in uniform, right? It's in their face constantly. They don't even have to be that cute, Lori. Just gotta have that badge. And you're gonna find a badge
in the
bunny,
eye of
just
the
like me.
beholder,
right? And so, you start to learn that their lives are very different than ours. They have a lot of different things being thrown at them. I wouldn't say that I necessarily learned to have a conversation with him. I think when he told me there was a situation, what had happened is I ended up breaking up with him because he had told me, he called me up to see how I was doing. And then he told me he was very excited, very, very like talking a mile, very fast. And like all revved up. And he was like, this guy took my gun off of me tonight and he put it up to my head and he had me on the hood of my car and I thought that was it. And for me, it scared the life out of me because I thought, I can't be in a relationship with you because I don't know if you're going to come home one night. You know what I mean? So I ended that relationship. And I ended up, in a good marriage with children and things like that. And my life progressed fine. But I think back to the way that I did that, man. And that wasn't the right thing to do. He needed somebody to be there. He was sharing a part of his soul with me. And I shit all over him. I was like, I want nothing to do with that. I'm done. So I think it just gave me a greater understanding for what they go through because, I get older and I reflect back on that in life. And I think of if I had been in that situation and my boyfriend had broke up with me over it, what does that say? You know what I mean? About you know what I mean?
Well, they know what it says because isn't that a lot of what happens is there's a big dating switch with those who realize, you went into it knowing exactly what he did. You were fine with it until it was put right in your face and you were scared.
Yeah. It's all fun and games when you're doing the ride-alongs and, they've got the authority and the power over their folks. But when the real life kicks in and you realize that, in a moment's notice, some crazy psycho criminal could take them out, it shifts your mindset real quick.
So either you would be, it seems there are two types. You're willing to take it to the end, when and if the end should come, and this is no fault of yours, you're afraid. It's okay to be afraid and to know where your boundaries are.
Right.
It would be frustrating. And is this where you come around to say that many cops, what was the terminology with women?
I say they're addicted to women.
Addicted.
And when I say addicted to women, I don't mean in a disrespectful manner. I just mean the police officers that I know of and that I'm friends with and that, my in-laws were police officers and stuff. They have what seems like an addiction to women in my mind, meaning frequent strip club visits. That's you see a lot of them, unfortunately, at the strip clubs. My personal experience has been that. And so that kind of shaped that for me and the thought process. And then as you get older, you realize, I don't know necessarily that it's filling a void for them because of all the craziness. I don't know because that's just one of many. And then, of course, conversations. But I get kind of the detachment, the emotional detachment that they can have from people just because they walk into those bad situations all the time.
I'm familiar with a couple relationships that went so volatile, up and down, and they were both in law enforcement. So there's another layer of that onion where either it's going to click really well because they're both living that same life,
right,
or it's going to go the exact opposite. And one of them, they were both pretty much emotionally void, but they could handle it because they both were. There wasn't an expectation of one over the other. So fear is a huge, huge motivator. And it wasn't that you were not into him. Just the reality of it was brought home.
Yeah, I didn't want that phone call. And not at that age anyway. You know what I mean? My life's different now. It's you get older, you get more mature. But at that age when I was thinking about dating and getting married and settling down and what my future would look like. And it was great when things were great. But when they were bad, they were really bad, really scary moments that I was not the kind of person I was not a strong enough person. I wasn't what he deserved. In so many words, I guess. You know what I mean? At that time in my life.
Okay, so let's change the wording on that. Yes, you walked away from it by choice. I don't think the word deserved is appropriate. You just weren't, like you said, able to cope with the reality of it.
Mentally capable of that relationship. Yeah.
And he he probably struggled long after having you as a girlfriend, finding someone who is otherwise a very strong person. That could break somebody, just the unknown. So in order to not self-deprecate.
We know that's what I do so well.
See? Technology, another male-dominated scenario.
That'll be the one that I will tell you has been the harder one, for the fact that, and I don't want to come across as arrogant, but when you have a pretty girl in IT, she becomes known as the hot chick, the hot IT chick, right? And unfortunately, a lot of times I found myself having to prove that I knew what I was talking about, that I wasn't just the cute little blonde in the office with the high heels, that I knew how to build a server. I knew how to troubleshoot a network issue. I mean, there was a lot of times that I felt that I had to prove myself. But I think a lot of that came from me feeling like I had to prove myself. Whereas if I'd just done what I needed to do and not really tiptoed around and not sat there and thought about, oh, you're not taking me seriously. I should have just, jumped right in. And I do that now. I do that quite well. I'll let you sit there and make a fool of yourself for a good 5 minutes before I break it down and tell you that how I know you're wrong on what you're doing and how your process is not going to be effective. But you come back, in 18 months to let me know how that worked out, and then I'll help you fix it.
With a big smile on your face.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Because I told you so. But I think it's one of those things where, and even still, the equal pay, right? Women don't get paid nearly as much as men do in IT. There's still a pretty huge pay gap. And I've seen it because now I work directly within knowing what different people are making in the IT field. So there's still that gender pay gap, but it's getting better. And I think too that as women, we have to kind of take the reins and go get the certs. Don't wait for somebody to tell you that you need this certification if you want to apply for this job. Take the initiative to find out what is that engineer doing differently that I need to be doing. Oh, he's done this. He's going to all these technical conferences. He's putting all this training. Not just he does his job and he does it really well. There's a lot more to it than that I had to grab onto. I think a lot of times we look for someone to blame. We look for an excuse and we like to say, oh, it's because I'm a girl. You're not taking me seriously. I've used that before, not intentionally. You just, that's what you're assuming. You're not taking me seriously because I'm a girl. But what we don't realize sometimes is when we're in a meeting and we have a different opinion, a guy can state his different opinion and it's just matter of fact. As well, I disagree with you. I think you're wrong. I think you're stupid. I think you're wrong. And that's that. A woman will sit there and internalize it sometimes. And not all women, because we're not all the same, right? But we have a tendency to internalize those thoughts instead and then hold on to it until it becomes an issue. And then now we are making it a volatile workplace for everybody because now we're losing our shit and you're wrong. And now we're arguing. Now we're argumentative and we look dumb in front of the leadership because that's the way we decided to paint it instead of just, well, no, here's why you're wrong. And so it's one of those things where over the years I've come to realize not necessarily that, the man's way is better, but just taking emotion out of things, which is hard for women to do, is a better business practice to make logical decisions based on fact and reason instead of the way that we're feeling at the moment. Because like I told you, I used to be the type of person I could hold a grudge. I'll get even with you later. Like you want to be a jerk to me on the phone right now? Let's see what happens when you can't log in tomorrow. That's, you know what I mean? Like that's vindictive little stuff that we can do that we don't need to do. It's all needless and it's stuff that we put in our own heads, I think sometimes.
So going back, thinking across your professional life, what's the ratio to supervisory men to women?
I will tell you, hands down, I prefer to work for a man. It's just been my experience. I have worked for a couple of women. Both of those situations ended very badly. Anytime I've worked for a man, I still talk to them. I still talk to those past supervisors. We're good friends. They give me recommendations when I need, you know what I mean? So it's a different environment. And I think because what happens is women, again, we don't take the emotion out of things and we hold on to things. And sometimes we think there's no other way to put it. Sometimes we can be catty. And we'll recruit other little cheerleaders to help us hate you if we don't like you, type of thing. Men don't necessarily do that. You're not going to walk into the office, get a scowled look from, a guy, and maybe some, but, for the most part, get a scowled look for something because, you did something 2 weeks ago that you had an attitude one day when you came in, they didn't like it. And now's the time to address it. When everybody's fine, everything's happy, let's go ahead and talk about it. That doesn't happen with men. You usually know right away when you've done something or you've frustrated a man. So I found it easier for me to work for men and with men.
Do you find that you've had more men nurture and uplift you than women?
Absolutely. It's funny because, we talk about the whole #MeToo. And people say, well, you're a pretty girl. I bet you've heard it all. I have heard it all. I have. But I'm going to tell you right now, I've also given it all. I have a mouth on me. I have those same kind of sexual thoughts when a hot guy goes walking by. It's not, sometimes it doesn't really have anything to do with gender. It just has to do with the way you control yourself. And not all of us do all the time, whether we're men or women. But I will tell you, I'd much rather have a guy call me beautiful or sexy or hot than some of the vile, vicious things that I've had women say.
Wow, I need to think about that one there a little bit. Okay, in that context, then, it's not to say every single man you've come in contact with has thought you were powerful and vibrant and valuable person. And the same thing with women. It is not gender. And this is the whole point of this show and why we think we can lump everybody in the same barrel of monkeys, so to speak.
Right.
Doing what I do, men's body waxing, I'm between their legs for most of the day, every single day. And I, like you, am keenly aware that guys are, for the most part, okay, we're talking about a handful of people who spoil it in every situation.
Right.
Guys are not pervs. They're not jerks. They're not looking for, they're just not looking for anything with me besides to get their hair removed. Right. And if you're, you've learned to embody masculine energy, which could have gone in a different direction from your upbringing. Yep. But you honed it in.
I prefer it. It just for me, the directness that you get, the straightforward, you know where you stand. Mm-hmm. I like it. I prefer it. I work better with kind of the masculine type environment. It just, there's not a lot of drama.
There's not. And for the gals out there and even the guys listening who don't understand what it means to harbor both masculine and feminine energy, I'm not sure I could explain that. You and I are both very feminine. We're very sensual, and this is not taken in a sexual context. Right. It is if we're living life in a sensual format, we're really in tuned. It's, gosh, what's the word I'm trying to think of? You just have more
deep understanding.
Yeah,
you get it.
Right. And it's not just from a woman's perspective and not just from a man's. It's a combination of, sure, we can pull ourselves out of it and be completely feminine. But for the most part, for me anyway, I operate right down the middle, which is why, like you, I am so much more aligned with men. And it is not a sexual thing.
Right.
It is an energy exchange. It just, when you are in the presence of someone who repels you, you just feel something odd. And of course, there will be men as there are women.
Sure.
Doesn't matter the gender. But for the most part, on the broader scale, I did not choose men's body waxing. It chose me. So that tells me that I was following the right path.
Right.
And for you to be in all these male-dominated industries, that wasn't an accidental choice.
No. And it's funny because we say that was because I was doing my internship with the KCPD. And I was so irritated, and I felt kind of bad because the college professor really went on a wire to get me in KCPD because that was a big police department. A lot of people wanted to do their internship with them. And I got very irritated. I remember the officer. So if he happens to ever hear this, Officer Jason White, I'm really sorry. I was young. I was stupid. I didn't know what I was doing. But I wanted to see the action. And he had me filing reports and doing paperwork. And I didn't like it. And I blew it off. And I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I was working nights as a computer operator too at a children's hospital. So I thought, I'm seeing the worst side of humanity over here in this forensics deal that I was working on. I'm seeing the best side of humanity over here with these nurses and hanging out with the NICU and stuff like that. And I kind of chose that. Oh, I'm going to work in the healthcare industry. They're the nicer, but I still stuck within that male-dominated field of IT. I didn't go into nursing. I could have easily switched my degree for that. Not what I wanted to do. I enjoyed the guys that I was working with. It's different. It's a different energy.
It is.
And sometimes it's really great to have all feminine energy. I mean, I love a girls' night where we can sit and we can talk about the men that have pissed us off and effed us over. There's
Wait. No, that's not constructive. That is not what all women do. Okay, so we have to make sure that people don't think this is what women do. It's not Hollywood.
No, but you're saying when you're in a relationship and you have issues going on, you get together with your girlfriends and you talk about them. Rather not how we want to label that, whatever. That happens. That's a fact of life. That is what women do. We can say that's not what women. No, I'm almost certain every single woman vents to her girlfriends about her man the minute he does something wrong. Maybe not all of them. I could be crazy, but I've got a lot of girlfriends and I know all about their marital situations.
It's what Hollywood puts out there as being the only thing we ever talk about.
Yeah.
Sex in the City.
Yeah, no. And surprisingly, what's funny is a lot of men, that's not what they're all about. They're not all about sex. They're looking for a lot more substance. Yeah, in the beginning, that's the attraction, right? That's human nature. But if you want to sustain that relationship, you're going to need to bring more than good sex to the table.
And that is both. That's both men and women. And this is where, we are toe-to-toe with the good and bad things. We do the same thing, but for whatever reason, in this and many other cultures, it's a defining factor. I've had so many gentlemen come in for their service, and we end up talking in such depth about how they're uncomfortable in society now. Yeah. They cannot hold eye contact with a woman walking down the street and smile and say hi, which has been a struggle long before this too, just because women can be hostile. Yeah. We've got some major barriers up. And some people for sure have been in situations where they have earned that barrier, unfortunately. But time and time again, there are so many stigmas to body waxing and why they don't come in because of how their body might respond, because of what their buddies might think, because of the fact that they're doing any kind of personal care stuff.
Sure.
Can label them a metrosexual,
right?
Which is a term that has no meaning except for being derogatory, just in being able to say
it's just a way to cut them down. Oh, you get your stuff waxed, so yeah, you're a metrosexual. You know what I mean? Like, girls love that. Do it.
Girls love it, and if
it feels comfortable for you, it's about what feels good for you. So do what feels good for you. Don't. If you got a woman that doesn't like it, go find you a different woman if that's what you like, because you can sit there and try to figure it out. You'll just spend years being miserable.
That's it. Well, that's a whole nother show about, about what goes on behind the scenes in relationships, or actually more accurately, what doesn't go on anymore. So let's rein this back in. And as a close, because, wow, we've almost hit the hour mark, just briefly talk about educational experiences overall in the male-dominated fields. Particularly, would you recommend it for women who aren't sure? I think I'm answering my own question. Of course, there are going to be women who that's not the vibe for them.
Right.
They're going to feel uncomfortable. What sets you apart from being that woman?
I think just accepting that it's not personal, that they're not trying to hurt our feelings. In fact, it's probably quite the opposite. Sometimes I think that they feel they have to dance around our feelings, and that gets in the way of their work a little bit. Maybe I shouldn't say mine, right? I'm a little more sensitive. So I think I would recommend it, even if you only did it for a little while, just so you can really see that opposite end of the spectrum and the productivity and the way and the methodology and the thought process. You could have a meeting with a man and have the exact same meeting with a woman, and you're going to, both of them are going to have completely different perspectives of what went on in that meeting, what was successful, what wasn't. And it's just a completely different way of looking at it. And I think for me, having started working with my dad very early, and he was very brash, very abrasive, it kind of cut my teeth on the unemotional type of attachment with people, right? So I'm easily able to detach from people if I need to. And I think with working with men, sometimes there's the camaraderie and there's the connection and there's the deep friendship, but you don't have to say it. You just know that if I need you, like I have a guy friend named Manny. If I needed him in a heartbeat, he would be there. But he's got his own life, his kid, his wife, and they're fabulous. But there's no doubt in my mind that if I was upset, he's going to be the first person to reach out to me and say, hey, what's going on with you? I saw that post. What's up? He is literally the first person. And it's not because he's trying to sleep with me. It's not because he has some ulterior motive. He genuinely has a good soul and he wants to know that his friends are okay.
Okay. So as a close, let's talk about the platonic, the unicorn relationship that allegedly cannot happen between men and women, the platonic relationship. We, as ladies, more than people seem to think is possible, enjoy sex and think about it.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not a one-way street. But, okay, with that, can we have platonic?
Absolutely.
Okay, why is it out there that we cannot?
I think it's the guard that we put up in the very beginning. So a lot of times, and when I was younger, I would do this. A lot of times when a man approaches a woman and is, hey, how you doing? We automatically think, oh, he's flirting with me. Mm-hmm. So we want to shut that down real quick. So then we'll put off some kind of vibe of, I'm not into you. Please don't try to sleep with me. Well, that turns him off from that right away. He's like, I wasn't even trying to, who are you thinking you are? Like, have you seen my wife? Thanks a lot. You know what I mean? It's almost insulting to them in a sense. Mm-hmm. And it's pretty kind of arrogant and conceited on our part to think that they're flirting with us just because they're friendly. And I think that that's part of the problem is that we put these guards up and we kind of prevent those connections with them. A lot of time what helps feed that is when just treat them as if it was another gal coming up and talking to you. They're, you know what I mean?
Until proven otherwise.
Yeah, and they may prove otherwise, but it's also too about the vibe you're putting out. I say this, you know, and again, I'm not bashing women, but sometimes we know what we're doing. We know the vibe we're putting out. We understand that we might be leading someone on for fun, for whatever it is. I don't know, whatever. We do weird things sometimes. But, we have to take some responsibility in a lot of those situations because it's never 100%. I shouldn't say it's never. Some people are they're really off the rocker. Mm-hmm. And they don't get it and they don't get no and they don't understand the hints and I've blocked you on every social media channel. What don't you want? You know what I mean? Yeah. There's a few. But for the most part, what you put out is what you get back. So if I'm a flirt by nature. I flirt with women too, and I'm not bisexual or gay or anything, but I will come across as flirting. I will tell women, you are gorgeous. I love you. You're beautiful. If I was a dude, because that's how I feel. If you're a beautiful woman and I like you, I'm going to tell you, I appreciate that. You look fabulous. I wish I had that rockin' body. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of times we get in our own way of making those friendships with men.
Oh, agreed. And case in point, say if you go dancing with a couple of girlfriends and a guy, you don't know what the heck, he could be totally fine and confident and walk up to you, but he could also have been over there for half an hour trying to get up
the nerve
to do it no matter what. Why in the heck can't you just say, gosh, thanks so much, but I'm not really ready to or interested, or I'm going to sit this one out, instead of, those poor guys, if the tables were turned, just to have walking up to two women is enough. But a group of gals who are going to start, as soon as he starts walking away from the shutdown, start giggling, and we bring our own trouble.
And True. I'm guilty of that too. I've made jokes. I think it's funny to make memes sometimes about it. So I've done that. I've been in that situation. It's not fair because the minute somebody does that to me, I'm going to feel like shit. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So I get it.
So kindness, we are going to have some loose cannons on both sides of the gender issue.
Sure.
But yes, you and I work really hard at keeping everything fair and real because not everyone is all anything. And keeping that in mind, is there anything you would like to finish with or tell people how they can reach you so they can show you what nice, beautiful, caring, nurturing people they are as well?
So I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me out there, Angela M. Felix, or actually just Angela Felix. On my Facebook, Angela M. Felix 79 is my username.
M as in Marie?
Marie, yeah.
Okay.
And then on Instagram, Angela M. Felix as well. Angela M. Felix 79 as well. I will tell you, if you go out to Instagram, there are, just be careful. I say a lot. So if you get offended by cuss words and patriotic bikinis, then my Instagram's not for you. But if you want some inspirational stories, go find me on LinkedIn.
Having done both, I would have to say touche. And with that, you've been listening to The Naked Truth, hosted by me, Lori Corrigan, and sponsored by Snake Charmer Body Waxing. And a quick host bio. I think we're going to change that up here a little bit. We're going to have, instead of the host bio, we're going to go from the sponsor Snake Charmer Men's Body Waxing. It says that thanks to Steve Carell's 40-year-old virgin, the social stigma of men's body waxing holds you gentlemen hostage, keeping you from enjoying this game-changing life hack. Right, Angela?
I agree.
There's a reason why so few waxing studios offer men's services, and many that do should not. The bottom line is Snake Charmer Men's Body Waxing is not the norm, which means a much better experience for you guys. Not only are you within 100% physical and emotional safe zone, but you're also the focus instead of just an afterthought. Head over to snakecharmeraz.com, where you can watch how a men's Brazilian wax is done from start to finish. snakecharmeraz.com. Until next time, bye-bye.